topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan. Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. I'm Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business TV and Radio. We're on W4CY.com. We're streaming live on Talk4TV.com in addition to Facebook, and that's at Winning Business Radio. And, of course, we're available in podcast after the live show on many other platforms, including YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, pretty much wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, we're there. The mission of Winning Business Radio and TV, as regular viewers and listeners know, is to offer insights and advice, really to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? That's to learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and certainly and hopefully to be inspired by the successes of others. But, you know, virtually every successful person that I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers, right? So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Jim Roche, CPA and MBA, and founder and principal of Robust Alternatives. Here's Jim's bio. In his 30-plus years of professional experience, Jim, I just called you old, Jim Roche has seen many companies that are successful within their industry, great products and great reputations. The founders are experts working in their business. What he has also observed, however, is that far too many of those founders and leaders can't seem to find the time to work on their business. Jim understands that every hour a business owner spends tracking their business is an hour less spent growing and serving their customers. Robust Alternatives consults owners and managers to discern key performance indicators and leading indicators for their specific business. When a system consistently captures, tracks, and reports on financial and non-financial measures, owners and managers simply refer to a dashboard of activity and results to discern the health and direction of current operations. Growing profitable companies are constantly looking for creative ways to finance expanded working capital needs. Anticipating those needs and approaching the bank at the ideal time is more art than science. Robust Alternatives determines which lenders tend to lend to which industries and key items the lenders need to get a deal approved. Jim's a CPA, principal of Robust Alternatives, assisting companies in designing and often redesigning their financial functions to discern, capture, and track progress on key matrices, both financial and non-financial. Robust Alternatives delivers exceptional value as the chief financial officer, for companies in a growth or turnaround wind down mode. Additionally, Jim has been involved in high-level tax planning and preparation for the last 20 years, where Robust Alternatives helped individuals and businesses minimize taxes through advanced planning and proper structure. Jim's focus is on manufacturing, distribution, and service sectors, where he analyzes the interrelation between company and owner taxation. He received his Bachelor of Business Administration in Accounting from UMass Amherst, and received his MBA from Babson Graduate School of Business. He founded his consulting and tax practice in '93. Prior to that, he has experience with a local two-partner CPA firm, where experience is gained working side by side with a partner, regional tax planning firm focusing on clients ranging from high-income individuals to average American wage earners and estate and trust returns. Much time was spent focusing on the tax impacts on business owners and their families. And a national CPA firm whose focus was accounting and business advisory services. Typical assignments range from serving as a permanent part-time CFO, performing due diligence and acquisitions, implementing a strategic shift of a troubled company, preventing an auction of fixed assets by the secured lender while creating profitable operations. He's a longstanding member of the American Institute for Certified Public Accountants and the Massachusetts Society for Certified Public Accountants. He often delivers educational and entertaining speaking engagements on subjects like taxation, worker retention, motivation, leadership development, growth strategies, change management, planning, and goal achievement. And that's all the time we have today. Just kidding. Jim's married to Wendy. They have 27-year-old twin daughters, Chloe and Sabrina, a 24-year-old son, Blaine, and they reside, in Franklin, Mass. Jim, welcome to Winning Business Radio and TV. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity. And yes, it does make me sound old with all those.
You and me both. You and me both, brother. All right. So first of all, let's get the important stuff out of the way. Tell us about Wendy.
Yeah. So Wendy, it's going to be 35-year anniversary in October. And of course, we dated for 8 years before that because you got to be sure. She tells me not to state those stats to everybody because she says it makes her feel old as well.
And does she work? Does she have a career?
Yeah, she does. So right now she works at National Seating and Mobility, which is a national wheelchair company, and she supports their number one sales guy who sells designed wheelchairs to various people everywhere.
That's very cool. And tell us about your kids.
So the kids, we've got my daughter Sabrina is an ICU, heart surgical ICU nurse at the Brigham.
Wow, cool. Yep.
My daughter Chloe is a yoga instructor, personal trainer, and nutritionist. And my son Blaine is looking for a job as an engineer, New York City or the region. If you know anybody out there, send them my way.
Shameless plug. Tell us a little bit more about that. Maybe we can get lucky.
So Blaine is a Northeastern grad. His ideal job is a design engineer, but he's looking for some kind of engineering that gets him close to New York City. That's his key thing right now.
All right. So if you know of anybody who might be looking for a gentleman like that, young guy like that, Jim's information's coming across the crawl, and you can reach out to me at kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Maybe we get lucky. All right. Tell us about your background. You grew up in Foxborough, Massachusetts, home of the Patriots, no?
Home of the Patriots. You betcha. You betcha. So yes, I'm a product of public education, Foxborough High. It was a great place to grow up. We actually had a pretty big class, relatively speaking. There were 365 kids in my graduating class. Mm-hmm. From there, it was a typical blue collar upbringing from my perspective. And I was betwixt and between whether I was this close to going into the Air Force. I was looking at truck driving school. I was looking at auto mechanic school. And I figured UMass Amherst had a lot to offer, so I'd find a major up there. And I went up as an undeclared major to UMass Amherst. And it took me 2.5 years to actually get a major. I was a second semester junior before they finally let me into the School of Business. And my roommate was trying the same track, and he had to go what's called bachelor's degree with individual concentration. So he got an accounting/finance degree out of the College of Arts and Sciences. I got into the School of Business. His first semester was a little less stellar than mine, so I think I made the cut there, and he didn't.
Eisenberg, that's a good school.
Eisenberg was a very good school, and that was as you know, it's a city up there, and it's quite a big school. And then of course my graduate work was at Babson, which was a complete 360. And of course I had to go my first semester at Babson. I was trying to waive out of a class, so I had to go talk to the bursar or the registrar or somebody. And my vision was UMass. You're in a line for an hour and a half. Tons of other people, and I get there, and the bursar comes out and says, "Oh, come into my office." And I sat down in a chair next to the desk and had a regular conversation, which I guess $30,000 a year versus public school. It's all what it would buy. 30 grand back then, but
back then,
back
then. So, what were your early interests, and what made you choose accounting?
So it was actually, I had a bookkeeping teacher in high school, Mrs. Triakis. She was the typing teacher first, back when there was actually typewriters. And she also taught bookkeeping. And so that just kind of clicked for me. And I said, I understand that. And it made sense. And then, like I said, I got up to UMass and I wasn't sure where I was going. And I said, that bookkeeping kind of enthralled me. And I jumped in my first accounting class up there, and again it just kind of clicked. So I started down that path, and then I quickly realized, well, they say accounting is the language of business, and so if you understand accounting, you can jump into different businesses. And so I quickly got my mind set on taking the CPA track, because I saw it as an opportunity to jump into a bunch of different industries as opposed to get pigeonholed into one industry and kind of living your career there. So it was a unique opportunity to see what people in different industries measure and how that can impact cross industries, et cetera. So that was exciting for me.
That's cool. When did you know? So right away, CPA. My question was, When did you know you wanted to be in public accounting? Did you know what that meant?
Yeah. So I did know what that meant, and it turned out to be exactly what I thought it meant. So it was a chance to look at some taxes, and like I said, a chance to look at a whole bunch of different industries. And so I was in the CPA world for, I think it was about 4.5 years. And then I jumped ship and went to this private company. And it was interesting there because that was my first view of the opportunity of a fractional CFO, which I didn't know it was called that then. But I just saw these two guys that were running this business for 30 years and had absolutely no systems in place.
Wow.
I mean, one of my first conversations was, well, who's your top 10 customers? And they couldn't produce a piece of paper that showed me their top 10 customers. Now, they knew off the top of their heads, number 1, 2, or 3, but they couldn't produce a document that showed me who their customers were. The 70-year-old, so there were two guys there. One was the engineer, one was the accounting function. And the 72-year-old accounting guy was involved in reconciling the bank statement every month.
Wow.
And these guys made money for 30 years. And I just think, geez, how much better would they have done if they had some numbers to guide them along the way? And so that's kind of where that kind of gelled and took place there. And during that time, I also went back and got my graduate degree while I was working as well. So it was nights at Babson, and that was an invaluable experience because for a couple of reasons. One, you're working with people. I was about, by the time I graduated, I was 10 years of experience. But you're at school during the day learning theory, and then you can go, at school at night learning theory, and you can go back during the day and practice that at the office, if you will, and figure out, what's real and what's just theoretical. So it was, and you're working with a bunch of other folks that are in the same spot that, you're on a project with somebody and they're in a different industry and they're working full time as well. So
and there was an entrepreneurial focus on that grad degree as well, right? Tell us about that.
It was. Yep. It was entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial finance. So I took a lot of entrepreneurship courses, and there were some great professors there. And again, even the professors, a lot of them were adjunct professors that were running a business during the day. And some of them were full-time professors that cashed out of their business. And so it was great that a lot of them had contacts and brought in people that were going through issues. I remember there was one course I was in was an entrepreneurial finance course, and the guy's name was Mendez. And so it was Mondays and about Mendez. And so first he came in and spoke to us about all the crap he was going through. And he had people chasing him because he was in debt here because this financing deal fell through. And so after he spoke to us, every Monday, the professor would give us an update on, okay, now the sheriff just nailed the cease and desist on it. He ended up okay, but it was quite interesting that you're looking at real life stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've had experience at small companies and large companies. I love your description of if I say this correctly, Leventhal and Horwath. Yep.
Leventhal and Horwath was the number 9 back when they were a big 8 back then. And so that was the national experience. And it was unique in that most of the big firms, you're either a tax person or you're an accounting person. And they had what they called their small business advisory department, which kept both under that same umbrella. So my background before that, I was at a 2-person CPA firm, then I was at a regional tax planning firm. And so I had a lot of good tax knowledge. And to go the accounting route didn't make sense, but I liked accounting. So to blend the two of them, Leventhal was perfect for that because you were doing both the corporate tax returns and the individual tax returns. And certainly if there's a flow-through entity like an S-Corp or an LLC where the owner's taxes are impacted by the business, it makes a whole lot of sense to keep them together. And that's what Leventhal did. But it was great because to go there and see some of the resources that a national firm has, and the research departments and all that other kind of stuff, it was a great experience.
All right, we're going to pause right here. We're going to take our first break. It's about a minute. We'll be right back with Jim Roche.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Jim Roche, founder and CEO, president, all things bossy, of Robust Alternatives. What drove your decision to get the MBA?
What drove my decision to get the MBA? I mean, I really liked Babson and I really liked entrepreneurship. So I think it was more the drive to Babson than it was for the MBA. I small businesses and growing small businesses and trying to figure out how to fund small businesses.
Yeah.
That was kind of all my background, and Babson was a perfect fit for that. And so I think it was more about Babson than it was the degree.
And I want you to tell folks what this means. Finalists for the Douglas Prize given to the top 3 graduate business plans produced at Babson during an academic year. And tell us a little bit about the business plan.
Yeah. So that was there's a course called Entrepreneurship, and the whole focus of the course is to write a business plan. And so it's a group project. And so there were 4 people in our group, one of which you may know, Kevin, a woman named Lisa Levesque, who is group leader of
That's cool.
ProAdvisor's affinity group these days. Right. So Lisa and I were in that group together. And actually, I lost touch with her for probably 10 years. And we ran into each other at a different networking event. But anyway, so the whole thing is you're submitting it's a class project. And all of the instructors get together and they grade these plans, not just for your class grade, but to go into what they call the Douglas Prize. So there was a guy, Douglas, who promotes this, who funded this prize. And so all the graduate plans go in there. And then there are, I forget how many finalists there were, but we'll say there was a half a dozen. My wife says I exaggerate. So let's say there were 20 and we were
hundreds.
Yeah. So it is everybody that wrote a business plan that year, but then there's X number that get to present before a board of investors or whatnot. And we made the final cut there, and our presentation ended up being the top. So there's the third prize there, and the feedback we got afterwards was it would have been better, except we didn't say we were going to take over the world and roll this thing across the universe. And so it was a whole lot of fun. It was quite a stressful project. So as we see in many of our business projects, you get to 85% of your time allotment, and you've only got 20% of the work done. You're like, holy cow, how is this going to come together? And then magically at the end, it all comes together. And apparently we had a pretty good plan because we ended up getting, I believe it was $3,000. I think it was $10,000, $5,000, and $3,000 for
cool
plan. And I have it actually right here. This lovely little clock as well.
Nice.
It's the Douglas Prize on the front there. But
very cool.
So that was 1995, and it's still sitting right there on the shelf because it's kind of a cool thing.
Love it. All right. So in '93, you are currently working. You founded Robust Alternatives and My CFO while you were working full time. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Right,
And my CFO part came a little bit later, but yes.
Okay. So tell us about Robust Alternatives and what was behind the founding of that organization. And you, as I said, you did it while you were working elsewhere.
Yeah. So I was working elsewhere. I was working in the company with the 2 gentlemen that worked there 30 years and were trying to sell the company.
Okay.
And so, like I said, that was kind of the genesis, but it really started out as tax and business advisory. So as to not obviously compete with my current employer. So I was doing some tax returns at night for business owners primarily, although business owners come along with a couple of owners and sometimes a mother as well, and maybe a daughter.
Right.
So I started doing some tax returns because I had a whole lot of good tax experience and I wasn't in a tax firm anymore. So it seemed like a natural fit there. And then, like I said, this one company I was at, these guys, after me being there and putting some systems in place for them, decided that they were going to try to sell the company. And me and the guy that I worked for, who was technically the accounting manager, but he was more like a operations guy. He really didn't know any accounting at all. He was a finance background, and he was a sharp guy. So he and I decided, hey, let's put a bid in to try to buy this company. And so actually back up. So the company was approached by a NASDAQ traded, it was a adhesive manufacturing company. And so there was a company, Loctite, down in Connecticut that was interested in us. And they went down the path doing the due diligence and trying to buy us. And then they had a reorg. And so they pulled everything off the table and stopped doing any acquisitions. And then me and, like I said, my boss decided, let's try to put this thing together. And we ended up getting Bank Boston to give us a subordinated loan, and we were looking for a senior lender and some other money. And the general manager, who was both of our bosses at the time, was trying to do the deal himself, and he ended up doing the deal before we did, and made it clear he didn't want to play with us. So it was a whole lot of good experience. But like I said, that was kind of the genesis of these guys ran this company for 30 years with no information. Let's see what we can do out there about getting some part-time CFO help into these companies on a fractional basis. And that's kind of the genesis of my CFO side of, Robust Alternatives. Like I said, started out more as a tax planning and business advisory and morphed into the CFO.
Also during that time, you became an assistant director for BNI, Business Network International, heavily involved in networking to grow business through word of mouth. Describe BNI for those that aren't familiar, and that assistant director role.
Yeah, so BNI was a great spot for businesses to meet other businesses, get referrals. Their whole tagline was know, like, and trust. So, of course, you got to know somebody if you're going to give them some business, and you got to like them if you're going to give them business. And once you get that trust thing going and you hear feedback from other people, it kind of really takes off. So at the time, the woman that owned the franchise in the region, it was relatively small, and there was probably only maybe a dozen assistant directors on the team, and it grew tremendously from there. So at the zenith, I had 7 groups that I was overseeing, just as a very part-time thing, and so it was kind of crazy. But they're groups that get together once a week, and like I said, they get to know, like, and trust each other. They give a little commercial every week, and they pass business between each other, or they listen for other people that may need businesses. And so for me, it was great as a CPA at the time. I really had my tax practice more than the CFO thing going in there. And everybody needs a CPA, everybody that's getting into business, and business to business was my focus. And so it was a great spot for me to get business, and then B, for me to meet other people like yourself who, I might have clients that need help with their sales department, and I don't do any of that stuff. And if I know somebody that does it, and we're both talking to the same prospects, it makes a whole lot of sense for BNI to do that. And it was a great business model because they didn't have any salespeople. The people in the chapter were the salespeople. I'll look around and I'll say, all right, I need a good lawyer. I need a good sales consultant. I need a good HR. And I go out and find those people, convince them to join to give BNI money, which eventually gives me money. So it was a great model because it's very circular in nature. Circuits. And so it worked great. And I was on the regional team, like I said, working for the woman that owns owned, she's since sold out, but owned the franchise for about 6.5 years. And I met a boatload of people, and I got some good exposure myself, and it taught me a whole lot about speaking professionally and presentation skills, as well as networking skills. So,
and that's where you and I met originally.
That's where we met originally.
Yeah,
exactly.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. And because of that, I got out to chambers, and you were pretty big in the Norwood chamber at the time. And it got me some great exposure and invaluable experience.
So you also co-founded a company as CFO, Amphenol Ardent Concepts. You were there for, I think your LinkedIn showed about 15 years. Tell us about that company and what that process of starting that company looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was called Ardent Concepts at the time, and Amphenol has since bought them out. But yeah, we started this company. There was the main guy there. My favorite type of company. You get an engineer and you get a salesperson together, and if they started a company, they need me. They need me. Those two guys know how to spend money and don't know really how to track it and how to control it. And so that's exactly what happened. so there was 2 guys there. Gordon was the engineer. Steve was the sales guy. Steve actually, side note, went to Northeastern Business School, and me, Gordon, and Steve did a business plan competition there, and I think he came in 4th or so there with his business plan. So that was a completely different business. Mm-hmm. Gordon was a crazy engineer that has, 97 patents to his name these days. Yeah. Everything from, he had a buddy in high school that was, I believe, a quadriplegic. And so he developed this wheelchair that had a ratchet system so the guy could recline and could sit back up again. And that was his first patent. Wow. And the company that we did the business plan for was a dental flossing device that we almost sold to Gore-Tex, which makes the Glide floss. But then 9/11 hit just about then, and they weren't buying anything. So that died. But so then Gordon went out to California and got into the semiconductor industry out there. And he's literally tinkering in his basement, came up with this wire that had some properties, electrical properties that was needed in the industry. And, this is the good part about being an accountant. I can talk about what this guy's talking about, but I have no idea if I'm making any sense or not. But I can count the number of pins that we produce and tell you how much they cost. But so he came up with this wire that he thought was the best thing since sliced bread. And so he got a patent on that. And he decided to move back to the East Coast here because Steve and I were on the East Coast, and we launched this company. And we were in a 1-room office, and it was a manufacturing. And so we had this cycle tester, which is basically this thing that goes all day long to test how many revolutions you can get out of this pin. So that's running in the corner over there. And Steve's in the corner over here trying to make sales calls with this thing jacking away. We had an air compressor down there. It was a nightmare. And so then we convinced the landlord to let us put the air compressor down in the basement. But we had to run the hose out the window and around the...
Oh, that's funny.
So it's your classic entrepreneurial company. And so, and then, of course, the first product we produced didn't do anything that we wanted it to do. So we had to scrap that and start all over again. And
entrepreneurs.
Yeah. We convinced a bank to give us some money, and we went to our first trade show and worked it from the aisle in, as they say. And the people that paid for their booths don't particularly like that. We had a gym bag of product, and we actually got whisked into some pretty big booths there, and people were looking at our stuff saying, all right, this is pretty interesting. Cool. And we got some traction there. And so then we morphed and made a different product, and that started to sell. And then we made another product, and that started to sell. And that was one of my classic CFO roles is, I started off as the guy that set up the bookkeeping system because it was me, Steve, and Gordon. And then slowly I backfilled and I move up the chain, and we hire people and I help train them. And I move up the chain until I move out of a job. And so it got to the point where it grew. They needed their own full-time CFO, and I helped them replace me. And of course, I was still a founding shareholder, so that did okay with me, and I wanted to see the company succeed. And lo and behold, we were in it. Our game plan was, we think 7 years and we'll ride off into the sunset. And 7 years into it, we're thinking, 7 years and we'll ride off into the sunset. And then
sun's still coming up, though.
So it took us more than 7 years to ride off into the sunset. But yeah, we finally, Amphenol came along and said, hey, we like this technology and we want to buy you guys.
Nice.
So they ended up buying the company.
All right. That's good timing right there. We're going to take our second break right here. About another minute. We'll be back with Jim Roche.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
Welcome back with Jim Roche. He is the founder. He's a CPA, MBA, founder and principal of Robust Alternatives and my CFO. Jim, before we move on to Robust Alternatives and a deeper dive there, what was your most important lesson learned? Probably a lot of them, but something that sticks out in your mind from Ardent Concepts, that whole experience.
So I think the most important lesson there was understand. That's where I really understood that people outside their lane don't understand what's outside their lane. We ended up at the time we had probably about 15 employees. And I said to one of my co-founders, I says, geez, we really need to get a retirement plan in here. And my co-founder looked at me and says, what are you talking about? This place is my retirement plan. So well, how about the 15 other people over there?
Yeah.
And so just, I was so locked into that and they were so locked into their area of expertise. So yeah, that figuring out that, people aren't always on the same page and sometimes have to bring them along slowly.
That's good. That's good. All right. Tell us about Robust Alternatives, and we'll get there, but my CFO also.
Yeah. So right now, my practice is probably about 50% what I call traditional taxes, traditional CPA taxes and financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 50%, and the part I've really been growing as of late is my CFO, where I'll jump in and be a CFO on a fractional basis. And that has a huge range of projects, if you will. I've got one client right now that I'm probably spending 10 to 12 hours a week with, and probably will be for the next year and a half or so. I've got other projects where I'll jump in and put a budget in place at the beginning of the year for a company and then go away and maybe come back quarterly and review budget versus actuals. Mm-hmm. And I've got other companies where I'll set up their initial bookkeeping system and they have either a spouse or a bookkeeper that are going to operate that on a day-to-day basis. And I'll come back and tweak it as needed basis. So it really can be just a small project-based thing, or it can be a full, deep dive into completely realigning things. I have a lot of companies that I show up to where they'll have maybe even an accounting manager level person in place, but that person's spending 90% of their time doing a lower level bookkeeping work. And I'll look at that and put a proposal in place where we can replace that person with a little bit of my time and some lower level clerks. And they'll have more full-time people available to them at a lower overall cost. And that seems to make a whole lot of sense because that accounting manager can't scale up for investor meetings or for bank presentations and that sort of thing. And like I said, they're spending 90% of their time doing the wrong thing. One of the things that many of my companies have in common is they run what's called the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Mm-hmm. And one of their big things is, right people in the right seats. And so in what I've described, you might have a great person, but they're just in way too high a seat relative to the needs of the company there. Mm. So that just doesn't make sense.
I mean, no fault of theirs. They don't have the skills and the experience to be strategic, right? To make forward-thinking decisions versus backward-looking, right?
Exactly the thing. So we'll replace some of those. On the other hand, I'll end up putting myself out of a job in some companies that are successful, and that's kind of a win-win. But then there's other companies that, like this one gentleman that I actually just saw this weekend. I worked with him for 25 years. He at one point ended up owning 3 Gold's Gyms franchises. Mm-hmm. And again, he was kind of a project-based thing. He'd do or have a target that he wants to acquire, and I'd jump in and do a whole bunch of due diligence, would run some modeling, would get him a new bank loan if that's needed, would set up the bookkeeping and help train a new bookkeeper if that's what he needed. And then I'd back off until he decides now he's going to double his footprint and he gets into a big building project, and then I back off, and then he blows his budget, and I got to jump back in and do some work. So yeah, it's really can be project based for an extended period of time. And like I said, it's been 25 years with this guy. He moved down to West Palm Beach area about 18 months or so ago, and he's got a new partner down there, and he's largely focusing on that partner's business. So he finally found somebody local, but he's been in 3 different businesses, and he brought me along to each of them. I'd help them buy in. I'll help them sell on the way out, and everything in between.
Excellent. Talk about your team.
Yeah, so my team right now, so we do have a bookkeeping division as well. So we have Diane is kind of our office manager and our bookkeeper extraordinaire. She 8 years ago was a retiring school teacher. She has a math teaching background, and she just needed to get out of the teaching profession because of a whole lot of issues going on in that industry these days. And she was very tentative 8 years ago, and now she's like the chief cook and bottle washer. She can pass off work and know which of our bookkeepers are going to be able to handle it, help them figure it out, flag us when there's issues that we need the client's input on. And so she's great. With that side of the division, we have we have three. One is a work at home mom bookkeeper. And she's trying to leave us, and I don't want her to leave us because she's not a bookkeeper, which I didn't realize until she worked for me for about 1.5 years, because she is meticulous. She's just got that mind that she's not going to let go of this nickel, and she'll find it. And come to find out, she's a school adjustment counselor, and her youngest just turned 6, and he's in the school systems, and she's trying to get back. I don't want to let her go, so she's still our work from home bookkeeper, and she does a couple of QuickBooks Online projects for her. So beyond that, there's myself and a partner, and then there are 2 other tax specialists, and that's the whole crew. My partner also has a payroll company, which is out in I still call it Oxford, but the town that Treehouse Brewing is in.
Doesn't ring up. Central Mass.
Yeah, out by Worcester, exactly. Yep. Central Mass. Yeah.
Up by Worcester.
Up by Worcester. Yeah. So that's what we got.
And are there others that work with you on the My CFO side, or is that the same team?
So that's the same team. Yep. Same team.
So who are your typical clients?
So I do like inventory. So I deal with manufacturers. I deal with distributors. I also deal in construction, which isn't really inventory, but they're taking parts and making different parts. So the whole accounting function is a little complicated. And that's what I love. That being said, I'm all over the place. I've got the guy that I mentioned that had the 3 Golds gym franchises. So it's really everywhere in between. But if I had a dial in, I would say, give me some inventory, give me some construction, and that's where I love to play.
So how does your client know that they need you? Well, I mean, at what stage, what's happening, what's going on?
Yeah. So oftentimes they'll come to me when they realize they don't really understand their numbers. They don't have a regular set of reporting, which, getting back and talking about EOS, that's what I love about EOS is they have a weekly check-in, and you kind of track numbers over time. And if you pick the right numbers to track, you'll kind of understand where your business is going.
Leading indicators. Talk about leading indicators.
Exactly. And they're not always financial either. They can be number of down hours on a machine, which can highlight a problem. So that's typically that they don't know where they're going, or something new is coming up. They try to buy a different business, and I had a new client come to me that their bank was about to throw them out because they never revolved their line of credit. They're like, well, I don't miss a payment. Well, that's not what a line of credit is for. That's more permanent financing, and you need a loan for that. But so they don't understand the differences there of permanent financing versus temporary financing. And the receivables go out, the loan goes up. The receivables get paid, the loan goes down. That's what a bank likes to see. And a lot of people have the mentality that I haven't missed a payment. Well, that's not exactly what they're looking for. So that's certainly a cause for them to get me involved. I've got a lot of clients that grow out of the tax side of things into the CFO side of things. Things are going along swimmingly. And like I said, maybe they need a new loan. Maybe they don't understand the way the bank looks at their debt service coverage ratios, and they think they're fat and happy, but they just pulled out a big distribution for their new boat that they wanted to buy and didn't realize that's going to impact the way the bank looks at them. So all those kind of things are reasons people want to engage me.
So they're going to acquire, they want to be acquired. They have growth plans, specific instances like that where they need much better, reporting, story to tell. Exactly.
So I had one client that they launched a business, and for probably 6 to 9 months, it was not profitable. And they had a bank loan involved. They became profitable. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking, all right, we need to double this line of credit. And the owner comes to me and says, all right, so we're profitable now. We can tell the banker to go pound sand, right? No, what are you talking about? we're building inventory. We're building receivables. No, we need the bank now more than ever. And he just had no concept. And so, as you know, Kevin, cash is king. And you tell the bank to pound sand just as you need a whole lot of money. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem.
So geography doesn't matter so much for you anymore?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Although I do like to be face to face.
Sure.
Like I said, even though I'm told I have a face for radio, I think face to face. There's something when you can go visit and see exactly how things flow. But it isn't a constraint, certainly as it has been in the past. But
I'm guessing most of your clients are Massachusetts or New England.
Yeah. So when I started this in earnest, my CFO, my girls were 3 or 4. And I was working for a company in Natick that most of their clients were, their biggest group of clients was in Salt Lake City. And then they had a bunch on the West Coast. And I was jumping on a plane way too often. And when my kids were little, I decided, you know what, an hour and a half drive is the most I want to do. And so, I had some down in Mashpee. I had some up in Seabrook, New Hampshire. And not a whole lot out west, surprisingly enough. But that was kind of my crux. I didn't want to be on airplanes. And now my kids are grown and they're getting on airplanes, and here I am still. I don't know how that happened.
I travel more now. The kids are older, but I didn't want to be a road warrior. I did some travel, but not so much that it kept me away from stuff. So good. I was able to find a good balance there. What in your mind makes a good client?
So ideally the best client, they have to take advice. If I'm going to give you some advice, and you don't have to take it all the time, you have to listen to it, you have to understand it, and you have to want it. So if they take advice, I actually have a checklist of all new clients I look at, and the number one there is they got to be nice people.
Love it. Yep.
Life is just too short to be dealing with people that are miserable all the time, and it's just not what I want.
Absolutely.
So it's somebody who's nice. It's somebody who takes advice. It's somebody really, for me, who's building a team. If I'm going to be your fractional CFO, I mean, you've got to have a team in there. If you're a solopreneur, you might be a great tax client. If you're a high earner and you need some of the tax advice, but you're certainly not that CFO. You're not growing the team. You're trying to do a lifestyle business, or you're fat and happy and have figured out how to be a one-man show that gives you what you need. But if you're building a team and if you're trying to go places with your business, that's kind of where I want to be.
So a typical engagement on the My CFO side looks like what?
So it typically starts off as a project-based thing, and we figure out what somebody needs. So right now I'm dealing with a guy that they don't have much structure in their whole inventory. They need different part numbers. They need kind of a nested system. They kind of have one-off part numbers all over the place, depending on what they buy. And it's hard to control. So for them, I'm going in and starting with this inventory project. I can see that they've got a whole bunch of other things that they need a whole lot of help with that they don't even know they need a whole lot of help with. This is going to help them get control of their gross profit. Their gross profit is going to lead into how can we plan future gross profit? And, how can we do? They don't even have a budget in place for their business, which I see a lot of times that your typical small business owner is just looking at, am I beating last year? That's good. Well, you need a budget, especially if you're going in different directions. What did you plan to do? Did you do it? If not, why not? Is there, should we plan to do that again next year? That's what a budget drives for me. So I do a whole lot of budgeting processes with my clients. And then, like I said, it can either roll from there. They'll decide, all right, we're good for now. We don't need you for a while, and I'll go away and still do the tax returns and still be in touch with them and jump back in for the next project.
Very cool. All right, I'll switch gears a little bit. You spent 11 years as a member of the finance committee for your town. That's service, right? Talk about that role and why you felt it was important to do that.
Yeah, well, so at the time, they were looking for people. And I had some financial abilities. So I decided, hey, let me jump in there. And it was, the first couple of years were incredibly eye-opening. Coming at it from a business perspective, well, you can't do that in a lot of cases. And I'll tell you why. Because, I'm looking at, all right, the town's got a budget problem. With a business, your revenue trails off well, demand trails off. You let go of some people. In a town, and especially in Franklin, our budget, we were lucky that for years, over 40% of our budget came directly from the state because we were growing in the formulas they have, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the state has a slowdown. Some of that revenue goes away, but demand doesn't go away. You still got the same number of kids to educate. You got the same number of ambulance calls. You probably have more police calls because you're in a recession, and those guys get busy when things slow down. And it was just a total mind shift for me that I had no idea how to look at this thing. And then the second thing was, I heard from a lot of people that haven't been involved in it, how can we be needing more money? Look at all these big houses that we're building. And if you do the math there, let's say the average house in Franklin pays $8,000 in real estate taxes. And so let's talk about a big house. Let's say they pay $12,000 in real estate taxes. Well, they're a big house. They probably have more than 2 kids in there, but let's say they only have 2 kids in there. Each kid costs $14,000 a year to educate. So they're paying $12,000. You got 2 kids at 14. We're already losing money, and it's just mind. And then you've got the roads and the DPW and the police and the fire, and so it was absolutely mind-boggling. It was good because Franklin is technically a city, and cities don't often have finance committees. They're more of a town type of thing. And in a town, the finance committee gets very involved in town meeting and actually presenting the finances, and people throw out different proposals, and you got to run and change things. In a city, you have a town administrator, and we had this guy, Jeff Nutting, for all the years I was there, and he was here for probably 25 years. And he knew state law incredibly well. He knew finances pretty good. And he was kind of principal in starting the whole budget process. I think the finance committee was invaluable because there were a couple times he tried to pull a fast one on us and throw a bone to somebody that he needed to throw a bone to, and it just didn't make any financial sense. And so we called him on the carpet a couple of times. I called him on the carpet a couple of times, and it's one of those checks and balances in government that I think is needed. And like you said, it was service, and it was a lot of work at times. And 6 of those 11 years I was chair of the committee, and there's a whole lot of hard decisions that go in there from a people standpoint as well. So it was, I'm sure I didn't make friends with everybody in that role, but it's my job to tell the truth there, and that's what I do.
Well done. Who in the viewing and listening audiences, Jim, should reach out to you, and why?
Well, so certainly I think people that are trying to get connected. I think you and I are involved in a networking group, Provisors, that has senior level advisors. And if you're looking to meet people in that realm to help you grow your business, I think that's key. Which, going back to, as you mentioned, my BNI days, I try to let all my clients know that, I'm connected with everybody. And so if you need something, call me first. And so I actually had this little old lady call me. She was going to her 50th class reunion. And the conversation went like this. She called me up and says, "Hey, I know you know everybody, and you told me to call you first. So I'm looking for somebody that does wine glass etching and some photography for my 50th reunion." And I knew both those people. And the lead time was too short for the etching guy, but the photographer made some money at her 50th
nice
reunion.
But that's how it works, right?
Yeah, and for me, they're calling me when I don't have my hand out. I'm just trying to do them a favor, and so it makes me more valuable from that perspective.
That's awesome.
So anybody that wants to get connected.
And anybody that needs your services too. Jim, thank you so much. I know you're really busy. You made it through one of the busiest times of your year, so good for you. But I know you're busy. I really appreciate the time.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on, Kevin.
You bet. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. This is a show about business and often business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio. You can drop me a note. I always say one of my many email addresses is kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. We are here every Monday. Stay tuned for next week. Will be Monday, May 6th. We'll do it all again. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You have been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.